Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sarah Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of 3 teenagers. I believe that your body does want to and is capable of rebuilding and healing itself regardless of what chronic disease you may have. And I'm here for you to answer your questions, bring you innovative and cutting-edge technology and health solutions to empower you and your ability to reach your optimal state of health. Today, I am beyond excited. My guest will be talking about my favorite topic, the importance of frequency healing and regeneration. And today, it seems like there's 2 camps in society. One is trying to reverse their chronic disease, their metabolic disease, and the other is trying to anti-age or increase longevity with different diets, modalities, and biohacks. The irony is that aging is a condition associated with a higher risk of these metabolic diseases that most of you are trying to reverse. So in actuality, these 2 groups of people have the same ultimate goal: to reverse chronic disease, which will increase lifespan and slow down that aging process. But what if I told you you could take it a step further and reverse aging? I'm not all about slowing down aging. I am all about reversing it. And by reversing aging or having your biological age go backwards while your chronological age ticks forward, then your risks of these diseases diminish. And not only will you live longer, but the quality of life will improve with age. And we're going to talk about the basic markers of aging, those being oxidative stress and inflammation. And what 2 things cause oxidative stress and inflammation? Insulin resistance and toxicity. If you're new to following me, I specialize in helping you reverse your chronic disease and ultimately reverse that aging process. And you can find my health articles, my cutting edge natural supplements, devices, and protocols at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I dive into an array of health conditions, their causes and symptoms, and how to address them naturally. And I have put together the most comprehensive cleanse that starts turning back the clock within 30 days. It comes with free group coaching, and all of the supplements are scalar frequency enhanced supplements that make the transition easy. You do not have detox symptoms. You have the easy fat loss for those stubborn pounds, the increased physical and mental energy, better bowel movements. We need to get the toxins out. Decreased appetite, ability to intermittent fast, clear skin, whiter eyes, better sleep. All of these things are going to be enhanced with the supplements, and then also the patches we're going to be talking about today. The difference between me and any other group coaching is I provide the most cutting edge, scalar enhanced supplements that work synergistically with each other, and your body does not experience those flu-like symptoms. You truly do feel great one. So leave a comment below if you're interested, or check it out on the website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Now to the good stuff. David Schmidt is the inventor of LifeWave technology and founder and CEO of LifeWave. His experience in business and product development spans over 30 years. You wouldn't know he's that old by looking at him, because he's probably, his biological age, I'm sure, is in his 20s. And he includes a formal education in management, information systems, and biology at Pace University. The LifeWave technology was born out of 3 years of intense research by David into the concept of being able to naturally increase energy and stamina through elevation of fat burning, utilizing wireless communication to the human body via phototherapy. The LifeWave technology is now available to all of us, and David is the holder of 94 issued patents, 13 pending, with many more to be written. More than 70 of those issued patents are in the field of regenerative science and technology. David, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, Sarah, nice to see you. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too. And as you could tell from the beginning, your work aligns with my passion for frequency-based healing and reverse aging. And I talk about the importance of detoxification through diet, exercise, supplements, and now the patches. And I know you, out of all people, would say that it's not just one thing, that we need to be incorporating whole lifestyle around reversing aging, detoxification, whether it's the intermittent fasting, the diet, the exercise, all these pieces, and of course, sleep. But what a way to start by just putting a little sticker on your body to help the process, right?
Right. Well, first, I agree completely. One of the things that we do in our community is we emphasize that unless you have a proper diet that's full of nutrition, supplement where necessary, get adequate rest, exercise, drink lots of water, stay away from all the things that we know aren't good for us, unless we build that foundation, then things like the LifeWave technology are not going to be able to have their maximum impact. So we really need to emphasize that building up the foundation, providing your body with all the raw materials it needs to repair and regenerate the body is absolutely critical. And then when we turn to something like light therapy, the way we're doing it, to stimulate age reversal, then everything is there that the body needs to start aging in reverse, which is my primary area of interest in research these days.
Amazing. Well, when I talk about frequency-based healing and scalar frequencies and some of these other modalities that seem like voodoo, I got the same response from certain people in my life. And I always say that I married my husband. It was God's way of making sure I know my stuff, right? Because he's the biggest skeptic in my life. And he wears the patches. But in the beginning, Sarah, are you serious? This is going to actually reverse aging? How does this work? So what I love about your company and what you've done with the patents and the clinical studies, it's black and white results, but maybe you can first start out with talking about the science behind it and the actual factual studies that you've done and how phototherapy works.
Sure. Yeah, we put in our initial phase of development for our stem cell product, X39, we devoted over 10 years of research and 4.3 million US dollars into trying to figure out, was there an alternative to stem cell injections? And the basic premise was, could we use some type of energetic device to activate the stem cells in the body and get them to act like younger, healthier cells? And in the beginning of this research project, my initial thought was that we were going to use some type of electromagnetic field. And on this, we received over 70 patents globally, and there's a number of different iterations. But to your point, they use a combination of electromagnetic and I would call it longitudinal fields as opposed to a scalar field, but we're really speaking the same language. And really what we found was that when you would blend a electromagnetic field with a scalar field, the results were unbelievably better. And my contribution to this field was to look at how we could, what's different about our device than others, was that we were creating frequencies out in free space. Very similar, I think, to the way Tesla did it with his magnifying transmitter. So instead of putting a frequency into the coil device and treating the body with that frequency, the frequency is actually created out in space and it's created indirectly. So, so what we found with this was that not only could we activate stem cells with it, but we could induce neurite outgrowth, create neurogenesis. So in human beings, we were regenerating peripheral nerves. And we were even reversing diabetic neuropathy. But most importantly, we found that we could activate the stem cells without having to use stem cell injections and get comparable results. So, to establish the base on this, we did over 80 clinical studies on our light therapy devices over a period of about 20 years. And this is based on photobiomodulation, which now in the public domain, there's over 5,000 clinical studies. And it's very easy at this point to understand the method of action, how it's working, to trace the biochemical changes in the body that occur, and then, of course, to measure the outcomes. So, the short answer to this is that we can stimulate the body with very, very low levels of light and achieve results that are comparable to stem cell injections.
It's amazing because when I was, it was 20 years ago, a friend of mine was getting stem cell injections for their child who was autistic and trying to do it that way, $10,000 a pop, really didn't know if they were going to be successful, kind of wasn't. And now here you have these patches that are so much more affordable. And what I also love is that they're pluripotent, where they go into the body and the body knows where they go, correct? Versus with some injections, you might have more targeted and where they might misfire or not be as successful.
Yeah, what's so interesting about this is when we think about how can we use light to create biochemical changes in the body, functionally, the method of action is that, at least one of the methods of action, is that you stimulate the skin with a specific wavelength of light. So this could be in the visible or the far infrared spectra. And what it does is it upregulates an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase, which is in the final chain of the final phase of the electron transport chain. And as a result, you see upregulation of mitochondrial function. So there's a larger pool of ATP, cellular energy. And from there, what we do is we include wavelengths of light in our device that will increase expression of the peptide GHKCU, which is also known as copper peptide. And the advantage of taking this approach, what does this have to do with stem cell activation? Well, the advantage to this approach is that copper peptide will reset about 1/3 of the human genome to a more youthful state. And as a consequence, we see activation of the P63 gene. This causes mobilization of stem cells. And an interesting thing occurs in the skin, which I'll get to in a second. But functionally, copper peptide is a regulatory mechanism for stem cell activity in the body. But you mentioned something very interesting. This is going to increase your pool of pluripotent stem cells. There's something called the Yamanaka factors, and it's been shown that specific peptides can revert the stem cells that are in the skin over to pluripotent cells. And it turns out that copper peptide functions this way. So when we increase copper peptide levels in the skin, the stem cells in the skin revert to pluripotent cells, and this increases the total number of circulating pluripotent cells in the body, which can, of course, facilitate natural healing.
Wow, it's just amazing the amount of science behind it, obviously, in the studies. The other thing that I was really interested in knowing is there's an ability with some, and correct me if I'm wrong, some stem cell treatments where they could actually increase the amount of bad stem cells or the weak ones, whereas this is going after and increasing the good stem cells, the strong stem cells. So you're not going to have any adverse reaction to increasing the stem cells. And you also touched on, and I would love for you to talk about ATP again, because it's something that I drive into my clients is we want to increase our ATP production. That is true cellular energy. That is not your coffee. That's not your Monster drink. that is not only increasing the amount of soldiers in each cell, but it's increasing the strength of each of those little soldiers, and they're doing the work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with respect to the first part of the question, when we're talking about stem cell activity in the body, what's important to know is that copper peptide occurs naturally in the human body, and the levels of copper peptide decline with age. So, since the patch does not put any type of biochemical or herb or drug into the body, we're simply using light to upregulate the production of copper peptide so we can restore those levels back to more youthful levels. And what we see as a correspondence to this is the stem cell activity in the body starts to behave like younger, healthier cells. And the results of our studies now, we have over 10 studies just looking into this one area. We see enhanced brain function, so people experience better cognition, improved memory, focus, speed of information processing, better cardiovascular function, immune support, better breathing, and very, very significantly enhanced synthesis of amino acids. So we see like leucine metabolism increases by 30 to 40%. So we get better muscle protein synthesis and faster recovery after exercise. But to your point, none of this happens without adequate ATP. And this is actually the area of our main focus, is looking at the Krebs cycle and looking at molecules like ATP, NAD, FAD, and how can we upregulate production of these energy carrying molecules? Because what of course is being found at places like Harvard and Stanford is that if we can upregulate these important molecules in the cell, we can alter gene expression. And what's so interesting about this is that if you feed enough energy into the cell says, okay, let's turn on genes associated with youth, and now we can have our cells function like younger cells again. So this appears to be the mechanism that makes age reversal possible. And that's where we spend most of our time. So you're absolutely correct. Nothing is going to happen in the cell without ATP. The more you have of it, the better you're going to be.
Well, it just, as you're talking, it's very evident that these are working on so many levels. It's like a domino effect. You mentioned the amino acid synthesis, protein synthesis. As we age, it is harder to digest and absorb the protein. You actually need more protein as you age instead of less protein. A lot of elderly think they need to lower their protein intake. It's the opposite. Well, as you're talking, you actually are saying that our digestion, our absorption of those amino acids is going to be as if we were 20 years old again, where not only are we going to have stronger endurance and all of the cardiovascular and the nervous system, all of these things, reduced inflammation. So our systems are going to be working better and younger on all of these levels, down to the absorption of the nutrients we're taking in. And then you have more ATP production to actually have more energy to go do the things that are going to enhance the age reversal.
Yeah, absolutely. We see a few very critical things in our studies. So the type of studies that we do are conventional blood and urine studies, and then we'll do a variety of different types of bioelectrical tests, such as heart rate variability, EEG work, and so forth. And with respect to some of the effects of X39, we've seen increased synthesis of glutathione. So glutathione levels will go up about 30 to 40% as well with using X39. And as you know, intracellular antioxidants are an important part of controlling ROSs and inflammation, and having a healthy inflammatory response and controlling oxidative stress is going to be critical to the overall health of the cell. Of course, we need those molecules to tear down diseased tissue or old tissue, but we have to manage that process. But to the other point, what's really interesting, there's a big debate in the age reversal community about mTOR, and that as you age, maybe you don't want to be building as much muscle. I think that the argument actually and the discussion is not the correct one. What the observation that's made is that in species that have longevity or people that have longer lifespans, they have decreased expression of mTOR. But I think that this is actually from a decreased availability of ATP and NAD and FAD in the cell. So in other words, if we have adequate amounts of energy in the cell, then there's no issue with mTOR. And the other thing that's interesting about that, to your point, is that in order to turn on mTOR and get muscle growth as we age, most people don't realize that after 40, we need more leucine in our diet, about 4 grams as opposed to 2.5 grams, to even turn on muscle protein synthesis. So one of the advantages of X39 and using copper peptide is that we can reduce the amount of leucine that we need, turn on mTOR, and that means people now can start rebuilding muscle.
And I know that as you enter your 40s and 50s, it's an issue that a lot of my clients and myself, I'm 45, I want to keep up with my kids, just as I'm sure you do.
I have 2 very active kids. I'm 58 at the moment, and I have a son that loves weightlifting and a daughter that is into extreme athletics. And I'm very excited about our stem cell research because I use it to keep up my athletic performance.
Absolutely. Well, I heard you talk one time about a discussion you had with your son who was 23, early 20s, right? And you said by the age of 30, you will not be aging anymore.
Right.
So I know there's a new patch that we were going to touch on and see what you could tell us about it as we are all just so excited. Number one, so excited with the patches that we're currently using. As I mentioned before we got on, I've got 5 or 6 patches on right now because I feel the difference. And I do so much stuff and I'm very, very consistent, almost to a fault with my diet and my exercise. So whenever I add one more thing in, I can definitely tell. And I also have different machines to scan me, like the Skio machine and a Genius app and that sort of thing, to tell me what's working, what's not. So I'm just beyond excited that there's something new coming out.
Yeah, to set as a preface to this, when we started as a company, we were really interested in producing wellness products, improving energy, relieving pain, improving sleep. And then in 2006, we started to release products in the field of anti-aging. And as time went by, we began to see the broad extent of what was capable with light therapy. In the very early days, I was really just interested in elevating ATP and using that to improve energy and relieve pain. And it worked really well. But the more that we got into it, the more that we found, well, we're only scratching at the surface of what this can do. And we've gotten to a point today that I only dreamed about when I was a child, which is we're looking at activating the mechanisms today that can potentially reverse the human aging process. We have a convention coming up next week in Orlando, and for the first time, I am going to be unveiling research studies that we've done over the last 3 years in human age reversal. And I think people will be very, very surprised to see the results that we've been able to achieve. But this is something, it's so important for people to understand that this is something now imminent in the scientific community. It is not a question as to whether or not therapies will be developed to reverse human aging. It is upon us. It's happening now. So like, for example, a study came out in Israel on the use of oscillating oxygen levels in the blood for lengthening telomeres and reversing part of the aging process. And that occurs over a very, very quick period of time, about 6 months or so. So this is something that has gone mainstream, and scientists all over the world are saying this is achievable. We can reverse human aging and extend lifespan out to 1,000 years. And this is Ray Kurzweil at Google who's saying this. So where does LifeWave fit into this? The way that we look at this, first of all, I look at it as, first turn to God, turn to nature for answers and for direction. And everything should be in harmony with the laws of God and nature. So this means that our contribution is to do this in a non-drug way. So people that are looking for this solution can do something that's in harmony with the human body. Secondly, there are a few steps along the path to age reversal that are critically important. So one of the things that we've been researching over the last 3 years is to look at age-related cognitive decline and age-related sarcopenia. So for example, so we have this new patch coming out. I can't tell you everything about it, but to put this in context, we would look at a problem like sarcopenia, which is muscle loss as related to the natural, quote unquote, aging process. And so by the time someone gets to 60 or 70, they've experienced, let's say 30% loss of their muscle mass. It's weakened their bones. And now they become a burden on their family. And it will really demoralize people and take away the quality of their life. So what type of contribution can we make? So we've looked at, are there peptides that we can activate in the body that will trigger activation of the satellite stem cells in the muscle and turn back on anabolic metabolism without manipulating hormones. So we're not trying to turn on luteinizing hormone or testosterone directly, but we're looking at peptides that are going to control the anabolic metabolism. And then, so in this fashion, then we could reverse muscle loss. And in some of our experiments, we've seen even people in their 70s can double their strength and stamina in as little as 60 days, all through stem cells without hormone therapy. So this is a reality now, and our research shows that not only can we extend length of life, but also quality of life, and people can recapture what they've lost over time.
Can you dive into a little bit more, explain the relationship between the daughter stem cells and the stem cells that are being reset by X39? Because this is something that I don't believe most people understand.
Yeah. So if we were to look at this is a very, very broad subject, and there's a huge amount of biochemistry involved, but the simplicity of this would be, let's say we start out with a pluripotent stem cell, right? And then there's induced pluripotent stem cells. Stem cells have to go through a chain of differentiation. So they'll start out, let's say, in a universal state where they can become anything. And then through signaling mechanisms, they will differentiate down into a multipotent stem cell. And now, once it's differentiated into a multipotent cell, the pathway of what it will eventually become is more limited. And then from a multipotent cell, it will differentiate into the final tissues, such as muscle tissue, liver, or kidney cells. And this is important because with a stem cell injection, the risk has always been, and why we don't see stem cell therapy globally and available to everyone, is that researchers have struggled with controlling the steps of differentiation in the stem cells. So you could get an injection of, let's say, an MSC stem cell, and then that's fine because it will release growth factors such as IGF-1 and VEGF that will repair damaged tissue. But when we're trying to do things more complicated, like regenerate the pancreas for treating diabetes, we have to be sure that the pluripotent stem cells differentiate into their proper cells in the pancreas, in experiments, you find lab animals that will, not in our work, because we don't do that, but you'll find lab animals, they get a stem cell injection, and then inside of their brains or inside of their tissue, where they're supposed to be brain cells, you'll find hair, muscle tissue, liver cells, from not controlling the differentiation of the stem cells. So stem cells are inevitable, right? They're coming in the future, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And so our approach has simply been, let's do something really basic and simple, which is getting the stem cells that are already there, which your body already knows how to control, and just get them to function like younger, healthier cells.
I love it. And that's what I've always been about, is that your body is a miracle. God made our bodies. They're a miracle. They're able to heal themselves. And this is just enhancing that by giving it a little kick to do it, right? To do its own work. Well, David, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we're going to dive into more of these awesome details as soon as we get back. Welcome back to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sarah Banta, the owner of Accelerated Health Products. And today we have David Schmidt, the CEO of LifeWave. David, okay, so in the very beginning, and we're in a new world, as you guys can all see, there we go. There's one of them. There's one of them. I knew that it was going to be okay if I showed a patch during this interview. I live it. Okay. So in the beginning, I talked about toxicity being one of the things that causes aging. And in 2021, I know you're very passionate, and we have to be very careful with how we talk about this topic. However, we are all being exposed to extreme toxicity, heavy metals, radiation in this new world. And I'm all about detoxification, because that toxicity is accelerating aging. And so that's just one of the factors that we are going against. Can you touch on how these patches, whether it's just the X39 or the combination of X39, glutathione, Eon, energy enhancer, however, what your protocol would be for helping with that detoxification effect?
Yeah, sure. We would go back to starting with the basics. When we talk about detox, we always start with lifestyle first, which is clean up your diet, exercise, move the lymphatic system, drink clean water, stay away from the junk, get proper rest. And again, always go back to looking at, are you doing the foundational things that you need to do? Just don't think that, you can take a pill or put on a patch and it's going to make up for, abusing your body with fried food, whatever it might be. So there have been some very interesting studies done in this area, but it's important that when we look at these studies, that 100% of the population today has foreign chemicals in their body. And in studies that I've looked at, it's over 90 different chemicals. So these can be plastics, which is, pretty appalling, xenoestrogens, which are lowering men's testosterone levels. Of course, there's a whole plethora of heavy metals, lead, arsenic, mercury. that accumulate in the body, pesticides, herbicides. So this is something that's a reality today. We've poisoned our environment and abused this planet, and now we're suffering the consequences. So detoxification is something that is a daily commitment. It's not something you do once a year and then you pass on it. You do it daily. And part of the process, dietary wise, would be to consume water and plenty of fiber so we can move the toxins out of the body. But what's going to bind up the toxins is glutathione. Now, I would recommend for anyone that's concerned about COVID, which is just about everybody, is to look at the studies that have been done on N-acetylcysteine. And the studies on NAC, of course, cysteine is the rate-limiting amino acid that's responsible for elevating glutathione, the body's master antioxidant. So in these studies, let's say it's 600 milligrams twice a day, it elevates glutathione and it acts as a very effective way to prevent some of the severe side effects of COVID, and can even help to prevent COVID. And so this is because glutathione is going to help to manage inflammation. But glutathione is a chelating agent. Chelation, that's a Latin word for claw. And so glutathione will act like a claw to attach itself to a foreign chemical, such as mercury, and pull that out of the body. So we get a lot of benefits from elevating things like glutathione. It will help to control levels of inflammation in the cell. It actually can protect the DNA from damage and even repair damaged DNA. Protects hearing loss, which is why the U.S. military wants all active military personnel on a glutathione supplement. It improves athletic performance, protects the brain, and of course detoxes. And even lifespan is correlated to glutathione levels. So we recommend for COVID protection, take an NAC supplement, but for detox, our glutathione patch works pretty well.
Well, I want to just emphasize what you said about NAC, and you've talked about this at the same time that I was actually experiencing in my own business a supplement that had the NAC and was pulled off the market because of the fact that it could be used against COVID, which of course they don't want out there.
Right.
And there were some supply chain issues, but what a better way to just go straight into a patch that actually helps your body produce its own glutathione. And glutathione is a supplement that is very unstable. It's very difficult to take an oral supplement and make it work. And even if it works, it's just the fraction of the efficacy of what the patch is doing, which blows me away. And hearing loss, that runs in my family. So you can bet that I'm wearing my glutathione. Someone asked what patches I'm wearing. Glutathione X39. And I have 2 sets of energy enhancer patches. I heard you mention that at one time. So I play around with those and putting them in different places. And what I love about those is it's increasing ATP production, but it also helps with circulation and digestion, which people just think, oh, it's going to increase the fat burning and increase my energy. But what about all of these other things? Increasing life force, increasing your qi in Chinese medicine. These are things that help everything just kind of work better, is what the way I explain it in layman's terms. And you just feel good because your body's working like a fine-tuned machine. Well, David, we've got a few minutes left. I want to make sure we cover everything that you wanted to go over today. Is there anything more that you want to discuss?
Oh, I suppose there's any number of things that we could talk about, but when we talk about stem cells and using those to support our overall health or support the healing process, facilitate the healing process, the patches that work really well with X39 would be things like glutathione and Eon. And it's important that, let's say someone has an old injury. What's interesting about stem cells is that they are attracted to an injury by inflammation. So the process is generally that when the injury occurs, we get an increase in radical oxygen species, And these are naturally produced by the body to suppress bacteria, to prevent infection. It triggers then an increase in inflammation, and the inflammatory chemicals will start to tear down the damaged tissue to make room for repair. And then those inflammatory markers, the inflammatory cytokines, act as signaling molecules for stem cells. Now, so that all sounds great. So the stem cells are attracted to the inflammation and the injury. The problem is that when people have chronic inflammation and a chronic injury, and the inflammation is there, the stem cells colony that goes to the injury, they're reduced and they can't do their job. So, for example, if someone had a damaged knee, they could use X39 at the back of the neck and then the Eon patch at the injury. And this is going to reduce the inflammation. It'll reduce the pain level. It'll improve mobility. And now the stem cells can go in and do their job. So getting the body into balance and managing inflammation is not only great for longevity, but it's a very important part of the healing process.
Well, something that you just touched on, and I want to clarify, is you said, well, the stem cells are attracted to the inflammation. If one of the patches is reducing the inflammation, is it reducing the efficacy of the stem cells getting into that area and healing the injury?
Yeah, what we've seen, we did medical infrared imaging studies years ago with the Eon patch. And what we saw is that it manages inflammation. So it doesn't act like a pharmaceutical drug, which is going to be blocking pain or clearing all the inflammation out of the body. We need inflammation just in the proper dose. So the Eon patch is going to elevate superoxide dismutase. This acts as a natural anti-inflammatory, will balance out the inflammatory response, and now the stem cells can go in there and they can repair the damaged tissue. So we don't want to turn off inflammation. That would not be good. We want to manage it.
Right. So with all that you know, all of the patches at your disposal and your fingertips, they can be overwhelming. The information can be overwhelming. Where do I put them? How do I use them? Is it best to put the energy enhancers up here or down on my feet? And where put the X39? I have brain issues. I've got knee issues. I know you've talked about X39 and I believe Eon. It's more of a systemic, you could wear them anywhere, but you've done the studies of putting them on the back of your neck and below the belly button. Would that be correct?
Yeah. With all the patches, we try different placements. And when we do the blood and urine studies, essentially what we find out is that these are systemic effects. So the easiest thing for people to do is just start simple. They could start with 1 or 2 patches, put them on where the instructions show, and just do that for 30 days, and they'll love the results.
And would you say, if someone were to say, I want to start out with 3 patches, which ones would you recommend?
Yeah, I think if I was going to start today, and this is going to change next week when we come out with X49, but I'd say right at the moment, I would use X39 and glutathione, or X39 and carnosine during the day, depending on what the person is interested in, and then the Eon patch in the evening. And the reason for the Eon patch in the evening is that it's one of its major benefits is stress reduction. So you put it on in the evening, it reduces the stress, it gets the body into a nice relaxed state, and it's reducing inflammation, and so it's improving the overall health of the body. So those 2 or 3 patches is where I would start, and people would be really pleased with their results.
And lastly, David, a lot of people out there are like me, type A personality. A little is good, more is better. I know that does not apply here, where you want to wear them 24/7 and you just want to pat yourself all over. Can you explain quickly what the science is behind 12 hours on, 12 hours off? And this applies to everyone listening, even the Eon patch, David corrected me that is not one that you want to wear for 24 hours. So can you explain why it is 12 hours on, 12 hours off?
Yeah, sure. In phototherapy, it's a phenomena called accommodation or attenuation, but it simply means that if you're stimulating the skin with light and you don't have an on and off cycle, then the body will accommodate and stop responding. So what we found over years of doing clinical studies is that 12 hours on and 12 hours off worked really well, and it gave the body enough time off so the body would continue to respond once you apply the patch. So a simple protocol is you just put X39 on in the morning and you remove it at night before bedtime. And then if you wanted to put your Eon patch on, then just take it off when you wake up in the morning. But there needs to be an on-off cycle so the body doesn't adapt.
Wonderful. And there was a question about, can glutathione help with someone that already has hearing imbalance issues?
Depends. Sometimes what will happen is the nerves can turn off because of a lack of ATP, and there's not actually any nerve damage there. So sometimes what people will find is that you increase the levels of glutathione, and all of a sudden their hearing gets better or their eyesight gets better. And it wasn't necessarily repairing nerves. It was just simply you improved the metabolism, you improved your reservoirs of ATP, and now the nerves could start to fire again.
Amazing. And you take these things out of your ear because they are damaging my hearing as we're talking. I can tell you that.
Yes,
right
you
now.
do. You don't want that field around the head. That's for sure.
No, and I'm trying to come up with a better solution during these recordings. But thank you. And as the question was asked, is there anything more you can say about X49 before next week?
I would say come to our convention in Orlando. If you can't make it there, we have it available live virtually. If you can't make it virtually, then it's going to be recorded and you can watch it for up to 3 weeks after the live event. I am going to be covering probably everything you ever wanted to know about age reversal in a very short period of time and why we're going to be able to achieve that. And that is going to build to the release of X49. And, essentially, we're going to be talking about what we have shown that it can do based on the clinical studies, and then some laboratory evidence that we have of where we're going with it in the future. So, in other words, we're going to show, okay, this is what we've proven that it does in our clinical studies, but here's some more laboratory evidence of things that we're seeing. And so we may have additional proof that, hey, you are using this today for this benefit, but in the future, you might get this other benefit of something to do with the brain.
Amazing. I can't wait. I can't wait. And it's such a treat to have you on. I really appreciate
It's my
you
pleasure.
taking your time. And I know that you'd rather be in the lab doing all the fun geeky stuff. That's what excites you.
Lab is a few steps away, so it's all good. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. And everybody, like David and I spoke about it, it is not just one thing. It's a lifestyle. It's incorporating all these things, getting rid of the inflammation and the toxicity and the oxidative stress are all the pieces to reverse your aging. If you have any questions for me directly, you can email me through my website, Sarah at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I'm happy to put together a personalized protocol for you, including the patches. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products. And this episode and all of my episodes are across over 100 channels, every podcast platform that you may be subscribing to, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Pandora, and whatever podcast platform you are on. If you like what you heard today, which everyone would, please share and comment below. Your friends need our help, and especially David's. I can't speak enough about the fact that with the elderly, with the young, with the people that are not going to change their diets, they're not going to change some of their habits, they can put a sticker on their body to start the healing process. And that gives them the motivation to take the next step. And that's just one way that you can help this world change for the better. So thank you everybody for joining us. See you every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. You can use coupon W4HC20 for 20% off site-wide at Accelerated Health Products. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you, David.
Thank you, Sarah. My pleasure. Thank you so much.